The rain hammered against the windows of my small apartment in Seattle, mirroring the tempest inside me. Barnaby, a 43-year-old architect, had always prided myself on my ability to design structures that were both beautiful and strong, foundations that could withstand the test of time. I thought I had built such a foundation with my wife, Winifred. 12 years, a comfortable home in the suburbs, and what I believed to be a shared vision of the future. I was wrong. It started subtly. Winifred, a vibrant and outgoing marketing executive, began working later. Important projects, she'd say, her eyes flitting away from mine. I didn't suspect anything at first. We'd been through busy periods before. But then came the weekends she spent catching up at the office, the hushed phone calls she took in the hallway, and the way she flinched when I touched her unexpectedly. My gut churned with a feeling I hadn't experienced since childhood: fear. I dismissed it as stress, as my own anxieties. I loved Winifred, and the thought of her being unfaithful was something I couldn't even entertain. I was a fool. The first concrete sign came in the form of a misplaced receipt. I was tidying up the living room one Saturday morning when I found a small, crumpled piece of paper tucked between the cushions of the sofa. It was a receipt from a fancy restaurant downtown, dated for a Tuesday evening. The time on the receipt coincided with one of Winifred's late nights at the office. My hands trembled as I dialed the restaurant. "I'm calling to inquire about a reservation," I said, my voice barely a whisper. It was under the name Winifred. I trailed off, unsure of what last name to give. "Winifred Albright," the hostess offered. My heart lurched. Albright was the last name of one of Winifred's colleagues, a slick-haired, arrogant man named Jayson, whom I had met briefly at a company holiday party. He had given me the creeps. "Yes," I managed to say. "That's the one." The hostess confirmed the reservation, adding that it had been for 2 people. The air in the room seemed to thin, and a cold dread washed over me. I hung up the phone, my mind reeling. I wanted to dismiss it, to find some logical explanation, but deep down I knew. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already starting to sprout. I became obsessed. I started paying closer attention to Winifred's schedule, her phone calls, her emails. I felt like a detective in some cheap noir film, a role I never imagined myself playing. I installed a keystroke logger on our home computer, a move that now fills me with shame, but at the time I felt I had no other choice. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The data I collected was damning. Email exchanges between Winifred and Jayson, filled with thinly veiled innuendo and promises. Text messages arranging secret rendezvous. Photos of them together, laughing and holding hands, taken by someone else. My world began to crumble around me. The final piece of evidence came in the form of a phone call. I was working late in my home office one night when Winifred's phone rang. She was in the shower, so I picked it up, intending to take a message. The caller ID displayed private number, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice strained. A man's voice, Jayson's voice, came through the speaker. "Winifred, darling, I can't wait to see you tomorrow night. The hotel is booked and I've got a special surprise planned." I slammed the phone down, my body shaking with rage. The betrayal was complete, undeniable. The woman I loved, the woman I had built my life with, was having an affair with a man I despised. I confronted Winifred that night. I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I simply laid out the evidence, the receipts, the emails, the text messages, the phone call. Her face drained of color as she realized she had been caught. "Barnaby," she stammered, her eyes welling up with tears. "It's not what you think." "Oh, really?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Then tell me, Winifred, tell me what it is." She launched into a rambling explanation, blaming her unhappiness, blaming my supposed neglect, blaming Jayson's irresistible charm. It was all nonsense, a pathetic attempt to justify her actions. "I don't want to hear it," I said, cutting her off. "I want you to leave." Now, she begged me to reconsider, promising to end the affair, to go to counseling, to do anything to save our marriage. But the trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. I couldn't look at her without feeling a wave of nausea. "It's over, Winifred," I said, my voice flat. "Get out." She left that night, taking a suitcase full of clothes and a lifetime of broken promises. I watched her drive away, the taillights of her car disappearing into the darkness, and I felt an emptiness so profound it threatened to swallow me whole. The days that followed were a blur of pain and anger. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't focus on my work. I spent hours staring at the walls, replaying the events of the past few months in my mind, searching for some clue I had missed, some sign that could have warned me of what was to come. But there was nothing. I had been completely blindsided. My friends, Ossian and Cuthbert, rallied around me, offering support and advice. They urged me to get a lawyer to protect my assets to make sure Winifred didn't take me for everything I had. I resisted at first, not wanting to deal with the messy details of a divorce. But I knew they were right. I couldn't let Winifred get away with this. I hired a lawyer, a sharp and experienced woman named Meredith, who guided me through the legal process. She was tough and pragmatic, exactly what I needed. She advised me to gather as much evidence as possible to document everything, to prepare for a long and bitter fight. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, I learned more about Jayson Albright. He was a known womanizer, a serial cheater who had left a trail of broken hearts and shattered marriages in his wake. He was also financially unstable, heavily in debt, and desperate to climb the corporate ladder. Winifred, I realized, was just another notch on his belt, another stepping stone to his ambition. The anger I felt towards Winifred began to shift, replaced by a cold, burning rage towards Jayson. He had not only betrayed me, he had also manipulated and used my wife for his own selfish gain. I wanted to make him pay. I started digging into Jayson's business dealings, using my own connections and resources to uncover any irregularities. It didn't take long to find something. Jayson had been embezzling money from the company, funneling funds into offshore accounts. He was a fraud, a criminal, and I was determined to expose him. I presented my findings to the company's board of directors, providing them with irrefutable evidence of Jayson's crimes. They were shocked and appalled. Jayson was immediately suspended, and an internal investigation was launched. Within weeks, he was fired and facing criminal charges. Seeing Jayson's downfall was incredibly satisfying. He had lost his job, his reputation, and his freedom. He was facing a long prison sentence, and I knew that he would never be able to hurt anyone again. It was a small measure of justice, but it was enough. Winifred, meanwhile, was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She had lost her husband, her lover, and her social standing. She was ostracized by her friends and family, who were disgusted by her behavior. She tried to contact me, begging for forgiveness, but I refused to speak to her. I had nothing left to say. The divorce was finalized, and I walked away with what was rightfully mine. I sold our house in the suburbs and moved back to my small apartment in Seattle. I started focusing on my work again, pouring my energy into designing buildings that were not only beautiful but also resilient, capable of withstanding the storms of life. It took a long time, but eventually I started to heal. The pain of Winifred's betrayal never completely disappeared, but it became less sharp, less consuming. I learned to trust again, to open my heart to the possibility of love. I even started dating, cautiously at first, but with a growing sense of hope. One evening, while attending an architecture conference in Portland, I met a woman named Juniper. She was a landscape architect, passionate about creating outdoor spaces that were both functional and aesthetically pleasing. We talked for hours that night, sharing our stories, our dreams, our fears. I was drawn to her intelligence, her warmth, and her genuine kindness. We started seeing each other regularly, traveling back and forth between Seattle and Portland. Our relationship grew slowly and organically, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. I found myself falling in love again, cautiously but deeply. One sunny afternoon, while hiking in the Cascade Mountains, I proposed to Juniper. She said yes, her eyes sparkling with joy. We were married the following spring, in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. Looking back on the events of the past few years, I realized that Winifred's betrayal, as painful as it was, ultimately made me stronger. It taught me the importance of self-respect, the value of true friendship, and the power of forgiveness. It also led me to Juniper, the woman who has shown me what true love really means. I learned that even the most carefully designed structures can crumble under the weight of betrayal, but that it is always possible to rebuild, to create something even stronger and more beautiful from the ruins. And that, in the end, is the greatest lesson of all.